Welcome back, Portugal Junkies.
Hello.
We are so glad to be back this week. Thank you guys so much for all of your support over the last few weeks as we have literally rolled out, I think this is episode 14?
It's either 13 or 14.
I think it's 14.
Right.
And we're just thrilled at the response.
We're on a roll.
Yeah, we're excited.
Each week.
Yeah. So we've been traveling a lot over the past couple of weeks, so it's been a little challenging to do
all the things we need to get done, plus enjoy the time away and get done what we want to get done.
Yeah, but we did. So we've been in Tavira last week.
Beautiful, beautiful Tavira.
Oh, Tavira is dreamy.
Yeah.
So Tavira is very, very different from Porto.
Yep.
Would you say? First of all,
it's like night and day different.
Porto is, the second largest city in Portugal.
Yeah.
And it's very vibey, like electric and energy and just cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Fun.
Tavira is a small little fishing village.
Yeah.
In the Algarve.
You'd say small. I mean, it's definitely not the smallest. I mean, it's vibrant enough.
Oh yeah.
There's
There's still a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yes, but it is a fishing village.
Historically built up on from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's dreamy, and we went there on the recommendation of a friend of mine, Aaron Parkinson. Shout out.
Whoop, whoop.
And this was when, a few weeks ago. So we went there for the first time, and it was dreamy. And we were like,
What should we do for the winter?
So we came out of Tavira last week with a new lease.
Yeah.
So we will be moving. So that is our story of the day.
Let me just clarify this. It's not just that, we've got a place in Porto and we've just got a lease in Tavira for the summer. No, we're only having
Thanks
one.
for that clarification.
Yeah, just to be sure that,
We are leaving Porto.
Yep.
And we are moving to the Algarve. And we'll do an episode about why. We will definitely do that. So.
Yeah, it deserves it itself. But
it's its own episode for sure. So anyway,
for definite.
We're excited. Check out Tavira if you haven't already, if it hasn't been on your
bucket list of places.
Yeah, or on your radar. Yeah. Just check it out.
I think it's really good though. I mean, just very, very quickly, it's nice to have Tavira as a place to go. When you look at Albufeira and some of the other party places on the Algarve, it certainly doesn't get swallowed up in that. It's a lot more
chill,
sedentary and quiet, and just has its own historical, beautiful vibe.
And
so
it's
can't wait for
absolutely,
that.
When I say beautiful, it is absolutely gorgeous. Think whitewashed walls, there's a castle in the middle of the town surrounded by these beautiful gardens and the river running through it, and Ilha de Tavira, which is their beach, stunning. You take the ferry from the middle of town to get to the beach.
It's like €1.50, which is ridiculous.
It is. It's crazy.
Let's not give too much away.
Yeah,
let's save it for a rainy day.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But today we are talking about something that you guys have been begging us to talk about, and we have really worked hard to prepare and kind of study and remind ourselves of this process, because we want to make sure that we're very clear about how to get your pet to Portugal.
Your furry friend.
Yeah, it's to us, I think that this was one of the more stress-inducing challenges and hurdles of the whole process. And I know that it's because we love our girl so much. We love our pup, Charlotte. She's a little Boston Terrier, and she is our family. She's our kid. And so I told him at the beginning, I was like, the reason why we wavered so much about going to Portugal.
How do we get her?
Yeah, was feeling like that we could accomplish that, and could feel very overwhelming because it's not the easiest process to really consume and totally get. And so it's been our mission for the past couple of days to think about how we might deliver this to you so that it is more clear than what we got. I feel like we just felt like we were always double checking ourselves about the timelines
More than double checking.
and the requirements to get the dog over here. And then a whole nother issue is actual transporting of the pet, right?
Yes.
Like
So,
flight, boat, private jet. We're going to speak on all that.
We're going to split
But
it.
we are going to split it up.
Yeah.
So today we're just going to talk about the requirements to bring your dog or cat over to Portugal, and what things need to take place on U.S. soil,
Yep.
and then when you get here. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about part 2 in another episode, which is the actual
The physical, like, logistics of
Yes.
going from A to B.
airlines, what happens if
Transatlantic.
there's just all kinds of things, but the actual transport of
Yeah. So
the
again,
pumper cat.
that's something that I'm looking forward to do, because that's more sort of in my wheelhouse of logistics, as opposed to some of the other stuff that you.
And I'm just like,
do much
big
better.
picture, get it done. Okay, great.
Yeah, let's do it. So this episode specifically, as you said, it's about the nuts and bolts of getting the approval.
Yeah, the
Essentially.
requirements by country.
Yeah. So this is a couple of caveats. So this is essentially talking to people with their own pet, their domestic dog or cat.
Yes.
It doesn't. It
Doesn't apply to any
we're not
commercial
covering
exposure.
anything into commercial,
Yeah.
into any other animal. It's literally your dog or cat,
Domestic.
domestic only.
Yes.
Also, as of today, that we're aware of, there's no requirement for quarantine
In Portugal.
In Portugal. Other countries, sure, but we're not talking about that. We're very specific about being Portugal.
Yeah, and that's as of us recording this. I haven't heard that anything is changing with that, but
Right.
just so that you know, when we record this today, there is no quarantine in place. We just have certain requirements, which is what we're going to talk
We're gonna
about.
talk
If you
about.
meet the requirements, no quarantine.
You're good. And the third thing really is making sure that, everyone's got their own vet. Everybody has their family vet that they've gone to for 20 years or whatever it is. But in order to do this particular piece, your vet has to be a certified USDA. It has to be. You might love them to bits and they might be absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure they are. But if they're not USDA, you need to find another one, or somebody that work with, or both of them, or whatever. But for the paperwork element, you have to use USDA. Cannot stress that enough. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence and checking and making sure that that they've got the credentials. Because if they haven't, you're going to come up against a wall.
Well,
and it's
yeah, they
not
won't
gonna
be able to do
It's
what
not
you
going to be
need
a
them
problem.
to do.
It's going to be a problem.
I'll also say this. It's not just finding any USDA vet. It's finding one that has done this.
Yeah.
Or at least has more than just general knowledge and certification, like a checkbox,
Yeah.
right? That's
I got my certification 3 days ago, but I haven't done one yet.
Right, that's
And,
not going to really be helpful.
not being funny, and it's not necessarily always the right thing, but I would venture to say you want somebody that isn't green in completing this paperwork.
I agree.
And being on your side each step of the way. And if you've got somebody like that, it's not difficult. It's very straightforward in the approach of the paperwork, but at the same time, you've just got to trust and rely on what you're being told by that USDA vet.
Yes, I think that overall this process is not as complicated as it may feel.
Providing
but
you
it's,
hit
but
the
it's
steps.
the timelines
Yeah.
that can be confusing, and we're gonna really work today to try to make that as clear as possible. And we've got some resources that I've built out there so that you guys can have a visual reference of a timeline as well.
Yeah.
That was what I was missing and we were missing. I feel like when we went through this process and we had a hard time getting our arms around all of this because maybe we're just visual people, and we didn't have that, and we wanted that, and so we've built it for you, and we'll link it and all that jazz.
good
But we'll come back to that.
Yeah, and before we sort of get into the specifics, the three main requirements are microchipped, rabies vaccine, and have a health exam certificate from the USDA
Yes.
vet. If you've got those three things, it's a new word, If you've got those things in place, then you're good to go.
Yeah. Now it's like, when do you do all of these things?
Right.
Because there are timelines that apply to each one of those in order for those 3 requirements to apply properly for your pet. So let's hop into it. We're going to talk through all 3 of these, and then we will get you some key resources. Number 1 is the USDA website. That's your hub. That is exactly, they're going to tell you exactly what you need, even further and more detailed than this podcast. So that is your main reference point.
Yep.
And I will also get you guys the timeline as well that we made and tell you where to find that too. So, okay, let's talk about it. The first piece of this is a microchip. Your pet is required to have a microchip inserted. Not only that, but it also has to be a certain type of microchip. It's called an ISO 11784 or 11785 microchip. I believe that most of these, or most of the modern microchips, meet that requirement. Like, we got our girl microchip before we even met. I got her microchip.
Yeah.
So this was 8 years ago, and not knowing about any of this, I was like, ooh, gosh, like, is the microchip that I had her implanted with 8 years ago going to meet what they're asking for? And it did. So I have a feeling, I don't know much about them, I have a feeling that it's just a standard, type of chip that they use currently.
Well,
but
that's what ISO is, International Standards Organization.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Look at that.
Going back to my hydraulic days.
Oh God. Okay, boring. Okay, so hydraulics. Anyway, so that's the first thing. This to me is the very first thing you should make sure is in place. And the only reason why I say that is because the second piece of this, which is rabies vaccinations, has to be done after the microchip has been inserted. So if you've got a pet that never had a microchip and you're getting them microchipped specifically for travel or moving to Portugal, then you need to do the microchip first and then proceed with part 2, which we're going to get to in just a second. The microchip number has to be on the rabies certificate. So therefore, you got to have the microchip inserted before you do the next step, which is the rabies. So here's what they're going to want in terms of documentation. It's simply the microchip certificate. It will tell you, describe the name of your pet, the breed, the weight, the microchip number, the company who did it, all the tracking, all of that stuff. So it's the official document certificate of the microchip that you will get after that. So that is number 1 document.
Yep.
That's the only thing you need for microchip. The other bonus thing that I did was when I saw that they were very clear about the ISO number, I actually went to the company that tracks the microchip for Charlotte. And in the FAQs, it actually said, this is an ISO blank, 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 blank. And it matched the numbers that are part of the requirement. So I just printed the FAQ to go along with our certificate, just as backup, in case anybody
questions
questions
me. Just to support the fact that it is in these guidelines.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's microchip. Pretty
microchip.
easy, right? That's the first thing. If your dog or cat does not have a microchip, that's the first thing you're going to do. Second requirement. Rabies vaccinations have to be updated.
Yep.
And so again, this is stuff that you likely are doing already for your pets. But it is something that in terms of the timeline you need to pay attention to. So rabies.
Yep.
After the microchip, number 1.
Yes.
Okay?
Follow along.
They also must be vaxxed within a year prior to your travel. So basically, they want an updated rabies. We do this every year, right, for our pets. So if you're traveling in January, they want the rabies updated within that year prior. But you cannot get the rabies update and vaccinations done within 3 weeks of your travel. So again, it's just little caveats. They don't want you to vaccinate right before you travel, but it needs to be within the year. So it needs to be an updated rabies. So when you talk about it and you give context, it makes sense. But like reading this on the page, sometimes you're like, what the hell? So, for instance, if you're, I mean, for us, we ended up traveling in January or December. Or, well, with her in January.
Okay, yeah.
And we started this process with our USDA vet in August. And we did her rabies vaccine in August, and it was a year vaccine. We could have done 3 years, but then you have to collect paperwork for boosters and all that other stuff. To me, it just is more simple if you just choose the year.
The 1 year, move forward.
And also just talk to your vet about it. I can't really recommend all of that based on your dog or cat, but I can say in terms of the paperwork, it simplifies things because you have a 1 year and that's it. You have the rabies certificate that has the microchip number on it and the date of your rabies update for each pet. And that is your documentation for rabies. That's the second requirement. So far we have the microchip certificate and then the rabies certificate.
Vaccination still.
Vaccination, and then that has the microchip number on it.
Yep.
Okay, third one. See, so far so easy.
So far so easy. Okay, we can say so far so easy because number one, we've done it. Number two, we've lived the pain of having to try and take 20,000 pieces of information and put it into 3 simplified things.
I literally cannot tell you how stressful this was for me.
This was more stressful than collecting some of the damn paperwork.
For us, to get a visa. Yes.
It's just...
Yes. Okay, but so far, hopefully we've made it easy. Okay, third and final thing. This is where you start to involve your USDA vet. Basically, what we are trying to accomplish is that a USDA certified vet is going to give your pet a health exam. They want to know that your pet is healthy. That's it. They want somebody from the USDA certified veterinarian list to certify and say, I have examined this animal and they show no concerns for me.
No signs of anything.
That's essentially what it is. But here's the thing. That health exam needs to take place within 30 days of your, no more than 30 days before you travel. So you can't be doing a health exam 6 months before. What good is that? Right? So within 30 days of your travel, they do the health exam.
Yeah. This is where it gets a bit sort of...
Right. That vet is going to communicate the health exam results to the USDA on a portal. And then the USDA is who issues the health certificate. And that is the third document that we're looking for here. They are going to issue that USDA certificate within 10 days of your travel. So the goal is for them to FedEx you that 3 to 5 days prior to your travel. So no more than 10 days out, but you want to get it in your hand within 3 to 5 days.
You don't want to be getting it in your hand and jumping in the car and then driving to your 7 a.m.
Like we did.
It's like,
that's a whole other story. That actually happened to us, but I think our planning with this, even though we literally stared at the timeline over and over and over, was that we were in the middle of January, it was Martin Luther King holiday, and we ran into delays on getting that FedEx certification back. And we had a flight. And we were like staring down like, oh my God, or is it really, we're gonna have to move our flight. So anyway, I digress. But that is the process that should be happening. Health exam happens within 30 days. Within 10 days, USDA should be issuing you a certificate. And then you have that in hand and usually get it by FedEx within 3 to 5 days before you travel. So that's your third document. So you have microchip certificate, you have the rabies vaccination certificate, you have the health exam, basically health certificate from the USDA. And those are the 3 documents that Portugal needs when you enter the country with your pets.
Yeah, I will say one other thing as well, which, with the USDA certificate, is if you have it, if your vet is close to you and everything works from a logistics, like airport, before you fly, you can collect that from your vet.
You may be able to.
You may be able to. It depends on
work with it, like in person is what he's saying.
Again, it's just one of those things where if we could have arranged to, and they would have been fine with it on the USDA vet, to pick it up in person.
Then we would.
Then it's like, okay, great, but logistics didn't quite work out as we'd hoped.
Yeah.
But
So ask that question, of your vet.
You want to take out as much stress points.
You do,
as many stress points.
Right, and you want to make it as easy on yourself as possible. And again, as I say it out loud, it's not as confusing as it felt when we were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that is our goal here, is hopefully that it's clear to you through us because of our experiences with it and understanding it more. And it's all about the context. It's like, you can sit here and go, well, this is 30 days, but you got to do with this within 10 and blah, blah, blah. If you think about the reasoning behind why they might be putting those timelines in place, it makes sense. Right? So those are the 3 documents. I would also say the earlier you start this process, the better. I can't stress that enough, because you're going to be working with a USDA certified vet who should be up to date on these things. But think about it. They could be certified, but they might have helped somebody get their pet to England or Croatia or right? And so everything is going to be different by country. And so don't expect them to literally be the expert immediately, but they are charged, because they're certified, to know more
than a regular vet.
than you, hopefully. But I also think that being prepared and going in and knowing these timelines, according to the USDA website, will help, right? So ask a lot of questions, plan together, talk about the timeline, and we had to reschedule our health exam for Charlotte multiple times.
4 times?
Because we were waiting on our visa much longer than we expected. Yeah. So you have to be flexible.
Portuguese patience.
You have to know that might happen. And it's all going to depend on your visa email saying, hey, you've been approved, right?
Then
you can literally go, okay, and now I need to book my travel, and now based on that, I need to back into when the health exam has to happen. And so it's really just about being ready and knowing what the next steps are once you get your answer.
And, as you alluded to earlier, we've created a timeline. It's a freebie. It just helps you visualize the timings. Here's your travel date, and then work back. I think that's probably the easiest way to explain it without trying to describe it.
Yeah, and I'll put a link here to in the podcast notes, and also if you're watching on YouTube, it should be in the link description.
Yep.
But our stand store is stand.store/Portugal Junkies.
Yep.
You can also find it on our Instagram page in the bio. But feel free to download that. In fact, I would recommend it, even if you're not quite sure about your timing yet.
Just have it pinned to the fridge.
I mean, again, we would not be here if Charlotte couldn't come.
Yeah.
Like, I've said that to him so many times during the process, and I think that's why we wavered back and forth for so long, because at the beginning, and we'll go into this more next week when we talk about the actual getting the dog and cats here to Portugal, because we kept running into concerns about her breed. She's a Boston Terrier, so she's a snub-nosed dog.
Yep. And
her size she's small for a Boston. And I just was not comfortable with some of the other options other than having her in the cabin with us, which really limited what airlines we could work with to even get her here. Yeah. And so when we ran into those things that had nothing to do with these requirements, it was more about her breed, her size, and what we were willing to do to get her here. I was not comfortable with cargo, and then cargo wasn't even an option for us because she's a snub-nosed dog. And so then I was like, well, that means that if she doesn't fit in the cabin, then what? And she can't go in the cargo, then what? We have to go private jet? We have to go on a transatlantic boat? Like, all of these are options that we will talk through.
Because all of these are options that we went down the road of.
Exactly.
So
we got lucky because she did fit in the cabin and she was able to come over here in the way that I felt most comfortable, thank goodness.
Yep, definitely.
But those are things that we'll talk about next time. But I did say, I mean, this was probably the reason that we didn't jump on going to Portugal earlier. It was not feeling comfortable about the process with the dog.
It's definitely one of those things where if you take a breath, as we've said with so much of this process, if you just walk up to it and approach it in a methodical way, and that sounds great to do sitting here now in Portugal, having done it, when what we really did was bang our head against the wall and, what the heck, how do we achieve this? What do we do about that? They're asking for this. What is it? Well, I haven't got a clue. But this is... It's not as difficult or scary, as it sometimes portrayed.
It's like we say, honey, everything is figure-outable.
Yes, everything is figure-outable.
It's true, though. It's like if you approach it with a positive outlook, like we can figure this out. We're not the only people in this world
and we're not the first to do this. And,
right?
It's been done
people
before.
Do it all the time.
How have they done it? Yeah, it's like anything.
Yeah.
That's really what I'd say is just, again, approach it in a methodical way.
Yeah, and approach it with some hope and some understanding and some, you can do this. You absolutely can. And not saying that it's not going to be without its challenges and probably a little bit of fear. If you love your puppies and kitty cats, like, it's scary because they're family members to us. And so... it can be nerve-wracking, but I can tell you right now that it is certainly something that you can accomplish. It's just understanding how all of this works. And so hopefully this has been helpful. Like I said, I'll link the timeline below, and you can find it in the Stand store. And we're just so thrilled.
And if you've got questions specifically about it, drop us a question. Yeah,
because we are going to follow up and do a second episode about this and
with the
next time.
How to physically do it.
So send us your questions and we'll try to answer those for you.
So I think everything that you've spoken about has probably covered all the high points. Yeah. For this part. And we'll see you next time for part 2. Yes, indeed.
We'll be back next week and we will talk more about getting your pet to Portugal.
Absolutely.
All right. Cheers,
Thanks
y'all.
very much. Take care.
See ya.
Listen up, future expats. For more content about our move, the visa process, Portuguese culture and destinations, and tons of support resources for your own decisions and potential move abroad, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Portugal Junkies.
Stay in touch and help us reach more people by subscribing here and following us there.
Cheers, y'all.